Hey, what's up guys? It is Psycho or Sam here and welcome back to my channel guys, and today I'm here with a brand new tutorial video, another episode of C# tutorial video. I'm still unsure about the name, but if you have any feedback, let me know in the comments down below about the name. But in this video guys, we are going to check for, actually this is going to be a little bit like survival game type of tutorial, so we are basically going to check for how we can manage to have attributes for the players such as the coldness, stamina, whatever, like energy from sprinting and all that, but also something like hunger and thirst. So we are going to be checking something like that, and we are also going to create objects that are going to represent food that we are going to pick up in order to eat. So if you have any inventory in your game or something that is similar for your survival game, obviously you're gonna have this as an example for you to sort of create that effect, but also implement this into your game, and you can do it freely by using my own code too, because I'm going to release it in the description below, so you can download it from my website. And that also means that you're obviously going to be able to freely use it for your commercial projects as well. And I don't really require any credits or anything, but it would still be appreciated, obviously. So yeah, by the way, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like down below and comment if you have any questions or if you're receiving any errors and need help. And let's get started with this. So first and foremost, I just want to talk really quickly that I through the scene that I have. So it's a standard Unity scene with a skybox, directional light. I deleted the main camera that comes with it because we are also going to create the character, or not create the character, but we're gonna place it down by using the rigid body FPS controller from Unity standard assets. If you want to import this asset and you don't really know how to do it, you just right click inside of your project tab, go to import package, and then choose characters. That's what you want to import. You can, however, obviously use your own player script. It's not really important to use the same ones that I use. So the only important thing here is that you have the same code. So yeah, that's pretty much it. But anyway, what I want to do is I want to start by laying down or putting in the rigid body FPS controller into my scene, and I'm going to move him like back a little bit so that he is actually across the map or the ground that is represented by a plane here. I can also click on plane and then rename plane to ground, just to keep an eye out for that. It really makes things easier for me when I name stuff for whatever they are representing. If I just have it as plane, it's gonna be like, well, what is the plane supposed to do there? So if I have it as ground, I know that I'm looking at the ground. So it's kind of like an easy solution to a problem. I also want to go to rigid body FPS controller that we just put into our scene, and then click on its name and name it for player. And I also want to click on tag and then go for player, so that I have it tagged and named as player. Obviously, so that I can keep an eye out for that as well, but also to actually be able to code. And when we're coding, we are going to check for the tag being the player, or vice versa with the other objects. So it's important to have it as tagged as player, and it's already created by Unity, so you don't really lose anything on it, but whatever. So I want to go to my assets project, or the assets folder, sorry, inside of the project tab, and I already do have a script that is called for player. And what I want to do then is actually create a new C# script. Like, I was going to create this new C# script and call it player, but since we already have one called player, I'm just going to name it player attributes. You can still call it for player. It's not really important what you call it. Just make sure that you remember the name. So when you're actually like referring to it from another script, obviously you want to use your own name. So mine is going to be called player attributes. So I just added that to the player object, by the way. So now I'm going to open up the script, and Visual Studio is going to take its time, the general stuff, and there we go. So no, I don't really care about that, honestly. There we go. So I'm just going to delete these lines before we start, and I'm going to move this bracket down a little bit. There we go. You don't have to do this, but it's just my routine, I guess, when I start programming. So what I want to start off by doing is I want to create the attributes. So I'm actually going to lay down a comment here and then call it attributes, or just write attributes. There we go. Actually, I can add that space. I want to create a little bit of space here so that we can keep an eye out for things easier, for the sake of this tutorial, honestly. And underneath attributes comment, I want to say public static float. I can call this hunger. And then public static float. Actually, you know what? We can just use one field for every variable. So hunger, comma, thirst, comma, stamina, comma, coldness. There we go. This is like a technique to use when you want to have several variables of the same type, like public static float. So instead of having public static float 4 times down below each other, I can just say hunger, thirst, stamina, and coldness. So it understands that, which is really smooth. And I also want to, well, I was gonna create a variable for triggering the food that we're gonna be picking up, or rather eating when we actually trigger with it, but I don't really need to do that right now. So what I want to do is actually go ahead and create new public static float and say max hunger, max thirst, max stamina, and max coldness. There we go. So these are going to be the maximum values that we can use for hunger, thirst, stamina, and coldness. And actually, now that I think about it, I'm going to go back to public static float on that and change it to just public float so that it actually is visible inside of the inspector. And I also want to move this up. This is not important. You don't really have to do this, but I just want to move it there. So I also want to say public static float once again, and then say mean hunger, mean thirst. Actually, we could just, we don't really have to use variables for that. It's gonna be 0 anyway. I was gonna use, since we have maximum hunger, I was also gonna use like minimum hunger, but we don't really have to do that because, you know, obviously the value is going to be 0 before the player dies because of hunger. And same thing goes for stamina, coldness, etc. So I could just go for void update, create the brackets or braces, and I also want to go back to Unity, and let me just, there we go. I want to go back to Unity, click on player, and then fill these attributes out. So maximum hunger, I want to say that I can have it on 100. Maximum thirst, I can have it on 100 as well. Maximum stamina, perhaps I can use like 200. And then maximum coldness, like, let's say 100. These are standard values that I use for my own personal usage, but you can obviously change these to whatever you want, and that's the main reason to why I created variables, to make it easier for you guys to actually go inside of the inspector and change the values, so that you don't really have to go back to the code and change it by yourself every single time. But you can obviously name them inside of the code if you're already experiencing coding, but you don't really have to do it. So I also want to create a couple of new voids, one being called void on trigger enter collider other. So we have parameters, or one parameter called collider other, which is going to be a collider type of component. And I don't really want to fill it out yet, but I want to create one more void called for void on trigger exit. So this time exit. So we want one we have enter, and then one we have exit. And once again, we just say collider other. And the enter one is obviously going to be used for checking if the player is colliding with food or like some sort of drink. And we are also going to use for on trigger exit for checking if the player is actually not colliding anymore, so that we don't really have it have the game bugged out, so that the player can still pick up food even though he's not triggering with it. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And now I just want to enter the statements of actually decreasing well, actually increasing the hunger and then decreasing the coldness, I guess. I wanted to use decrease there. So I could create a few methods for this, or I could just use void update because it's not really that complex either. So I'm just going to say if max hunger is lower than, or wait, hold up. If hunger is lower than max hunger, there we go. Because hunger is going to increase, not decrease, until the player dies, obviously, or eats food. And if hunger is lower than max hunger, we are going to set hunger to plus equal 1 times time.delta time. This is going to make hunger increase by 1 every second. And I actually want to test the timing if it's correct. So what I'm gonna do is, inside of void update somewhere, I'm going to say print hunger, just to see if it actually adds by 1 each second, just to make sure. You don't really have to do this test, like you can watch me do it because it's practically the same. And yeah, it is 1 every second. There we go. I just wanted to make sure. Since hunger is actually set to 100, I can go back to Unity's inspector and change hunger to 50 because like 100 is way too high for this example. Or else I could have just kept it, but it doesn't really matter because it's not gonna reach that number before we eat anything anyway. So max stamina, I can keep that, and max coldness I can keep that. Or else we could also increase the number that is going to be added by every second, which could be 2 by every second, or even 10, which means that it's gonna take 10 seconds before the player dies, which is a schemas game. But yeah, and I pretty much want to do this with thirst too. So if thirst is lower than max thirst, thirst plus equal 1 times time dot time. One technique that I want to teach you guys is to remove these curly brackets when you use one single line statement. So since we only have one single statement inside of these if statement, we don't really have to use curly brackets because it's not needed. But if you decide to add some more code inside of here, you can obviously use the curly brackets because then that's necessary. I'm also going to delete or perhaps remove the print that we just added, or I added. I don't really know if you guys added that, but you didn't need to, but still, it's pretty good to check it out, you know? And now I want to set the kind of like death to player, so that I say if hunger is equal to max or higher or equal to max hunger, then I want to set or higher or equal to max hunger. There we go. I don't know why I'm so clumsy today. There we go. And curly brackets, whatever. And then if actually we could just use one single statement for that. So if hunger or hunger is greater than or equal to max hunger, or, so we just add these two icons. Thirst is greater than or equal to max thirst, then the player is going to die no matter what. So I could just say die, create a new method for that. If you're not using one function for dying already, I'm just gonna create it for myself. So if you already have a function for that, you can just use that. So just refer to it. There we go. I can just say print you died because of hunger or thirst. I could also make it a little bit more complex by like checking if thirst or hunger is 0 and then saying, well, you died because of hunger or you died of thirst. But it's not really needed for this example, I guess. It's literally just an if statement, like if hunger is equal to 0, then print you die because of hunger, and the same thing for the thirst. And once again, I can actually delete these curly brackets because we don't really need them. The code is going to function properly without them too. There we go. Now I'm also going to decrease stamina so that we actually set stamina to 0 after the player is obviously sprinting for a while. So what I'm going to do is actually go back to above void update. I'm going to start a new void called for start, or create a new void called start. Start a new void. There we go. And then I'm going to say stamina is equals to max max stamina. There we go. Why am I so clumsy? What is happening? There we go. Stamina. There we go. There we go. Alright, so I just want to set stamina to max stamina because obviously we don't increase stamina, we decrease stamina the more the player is running. So if you're, I don't know if you're using like a player component already, but actually I'm just going to create it anyway. So I'm going to say private bool called, what should we call it? Sprinting or running. Yeah, running is easier. Private bool running. So this is going to check if the player is actually holding down the shift button or whatever button you're using in your game for checking or sprinting the player basically, so that they move faster. move at a faster rate. So I want to say if input, since I don't really have that built into my player script, I want to say if input.get key code dot left shift, I think it was called. Yeah, it was correct. Good. Then I want to say stamina minus equal 1 times time dot delta time. There we go. Delta time. So basically what we're doing here, once again, I'm using get key instead of get key down, because get key down only checks if you click the button, but get key checks if you click and hold. So while we are holding the button down, it's going to decrease stamina by 1 every second. And since we have stamina to set to, what was it, 10, or we had it 200, okay. We can actually set it to, we can set stamina to 100 to make it easier for ourselves. And then we can decrease stamina by 10 every second. So obviously, if you're using like a player component right now, you want to make sure that the player is not going to be able to sprint after a while. So I'm going to make it easier for myself and just say if, I just want to remove that, there we go. If stamina is lower or equal to 0. Oh, actually, we forgot about something. I just want to go back to input.get key code.left shift, and then after this first parenthesis here ending, I want to say and by putting 2 and icons or symbols, and then I want to say stamina is greater than 0. There we go. That makes sure that it can't be decreased anymore if it's actually lower or is equal to 0, so that it doesn't bug out and go to like -20 and the player has to wait like 10 seconds to get it back up. So yeah, that's pretty good. And we now say if stamina is less than or equal to 0. Oops, that created 2. Then we say, well, once again, you're going to be able to disable your script or component or whatever, the ability for the player to actually sprint here. But I am going to say print no, well, stamina is equal to 0. You can't sprint anymore. Wait a little bit to sprint again. There we go. There we go, and that's pretty much done. So now it's gonna check for stamina, and we are by real time we are decreasing stamina each second while the player is sprinting. And technically speaking, the player shouldn't be able to sprint anymore when stamina hits 0 because of the script or this line here, but I'm obviously not going to root inside of the player component right now. But if you need help with that, let me know in the comments down below and I will help you with it. So shouldn't be a problem. And without actually spending any more or perhaps wasting more time on this, I actually want to move into hunger and thirst. So since the thirst and hunger are both increasing by every second, I actually want to make it a little bit more variant and change thirst increasing to 0.5 F. You need to add F afterwards if you're using decimals, so that's required. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I wanted to just do that so that the thirst is going to be increased by half the time, or half the amount every second by compared to hunger, because you obviously get hungry. Well, that's the other logic. Actually, we can have thirst on 1 and then hunger at 0.5 F. You can have 1 F2 as long as you're using a float. If you're using an integer, which I don't suggest you to use for this example, if you're using an integer, it's not going to accept F. So if you're using a float, you can just add an F behind it. But yeah, that's pretty cool. And I can also delete these curly brackets here. Like, I use them at the start just to teach you guys how to actually use them properly, but you don't really need them when you're actually having like a one-line statement here, so it's not needed. What I want to do, since we actually have the method of, or methodology of actually decreasing or increasing the hunger and thirst now by different values every second, I just want to make simply that the player is going to be able to pick up food and water. So what I want to go ahead and do is, first and foremost, I want to go back to Unity, and I want to create a new cube. There we go. And I can resize this, like make it a little bit smaller. There we go. Scale it down a little bit and rotate it perhaps. I also want to add a rigid body so that it actually, you know, or actually we can have it float so that the player is going to see it easier. There we go, like that. I'm going to call this cube for food, and then I am also going to create a new tag, and I'm actually going to create 2 new tags. So one is going to be called for food, and the other one is going to be called water or drinkable or something like that. But water is pretty much the standard one, so it shouldn't be a problem. Now I want to go back to my food cube, and then I want to go to tag and then tag it for food too. So don't forget to do that. And now what I want to do is I want to add a new box collider to this object, and I want to highlight that inside of the component menu or the inspector. I can't believe I called it for a component menu. That's so old school. I just want to resize it a little bit so that the player can actually interact with it instead of like being blocked by the obvious or the standard. Actually, you know what? This is really stupid. We could just go to the box collider by standard and then click on the is trigger, and it's done, because we obviously don't need the physical ability of interacting with the food. We just simply have to walk on it and then pick it up. That's it. Literally, that's it. So we have it now tagged as food, and then we also have it called food, which is good. And then we have box collider clicked on is trigger. Make sure to check this, because otherwise it's not going to work. And if it's not working for you, please, before you do anything at all, like literally anything, just go ahead and check if it's on to is trigger, because it's really simple to uncheck it by accident like this, or actually just forget to check it. Like I've done it so many times, or perhaps maybe I'm just stupid. Could be that. I mean, it's an option. Now I want to create a new object, but this one is going to be sphere. I am so creative. That's the reason why I'm using sphere. And this is actually going to be water. So this is going to represent water, so I'm going to name it water, and I'm also going to tag it water. So I just go to untagged and then click on water. That's as simple as it gets. And once again, just as we did with the food, I want to go to the sphere collider inside of the water sphere, and I want to click in or check in the is trigger button. There we go. So that we can actually walk inside of it instead of being blocked by its radius. And that's pretty much it. So what I want to go to now is Visual Studio, and inside of on trigger enter, I want to create a new if statement and say if other.tag is equals to obviously 2 equal signs, and then I want to say inside of quotation marks food, so that we can check if we're triggering with food. And I actually can copy this. This is the lazy way. Don't be lazy, guys. Just rewrite the code. Actually, you know what? Fuck it. Other.tag is equal to water, so that we just check if it's water. The reason I decided to write it instead of actually copying and pasting is to teach you guys to not be lazy. I know that this may sound like cringy or stupid, but it's actually a really good practice to not be lazy when writing code, because you obviously want to be able to memorize the code but also learn. So it's a good way of learning to repeat the actions. And instead of if other.tag is equals food, I want to say that if we obviously collide with the food, I want to say that hunger is going to be minus, or hunger is going to be equal to hunger minus 50. So what I'm doing here is simple math. As soon as we trigger with the food, I will decrease the current hunger that we have on the player with 50. So that means that, you know, it's obviously going to be hunger is equals to hunger minus 50. So it's really going to be that simple. And same thing with water. I just want to say thirst is equal to thirst minus, what should we have as a value here? Let's say 25. Make it easier for ourselves. There we go. And well, on trigger exit, now that I think about it, we don't really, actually we're going to be able to use it on coldness, so because we have that value now. I'm going to move on to it after I'm done with food and water, so just make sure that it's coming up, so you shouldn't worry. And basically we can go back and play real quick, and I actually want to have a way of seeing hunger and thirst, so I just want to say perhaps we can just, instead of public static float, we can just set it to public float so that we can actually see the attributes inside of this inspector window. If you didn't follow up what I did there, I just enabled public float, or else we could just print, but whatever, I'll just use it as public. I just change it from public static float to public float. So now we have 2 public floats. There we go. And I can start playing, and you can see the hunger and thirst increasing by time. If I sprint by holding down shift, you can see that the stamina is decreasing, so it's all working out. It's not increasing, I forgot to add that back. So since the hunger is increasing, I can just walk onto this cube and see that it actually decreases by the value. So now the problem is, since we're not using on trigger exit and actually not destroying the object, it's going to decrease by 50 and every time we walk on this object, and the problem is that this is not going to be destroyed. So what I want to do is, instead of where I wrote if other.tag is equal to food, I want to say destroy the other.game object. There we go. So that the player is not able to walk on it again and again and again, even though he ate it, to, you know, pick up the hunger again and again. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And same thing with thirst. I just want to say destroy other.game object, so that it destroys the water as soon as we walk on it. So we can test it out. There we go. And once again, the hunger is increasing. I walk on it and it decreases, but now it's destroyed as well. So the player has already picked up the food, which is really good, especially if you're using like actually in any scenario at all, this is very, very, like, this is literally necessary, but especially if you're using like an inventory or something, you just destroy the object and then add the food to your inventory. So it's going to be easy for the player, and it's going to be, you know, you're just going to prevent your game from bugging out so that the player cannot pick the food several times. Same thing with water. So now that we're done with that, I want to move to coldness. I was planning how I should do this. Like, I know the methodology, but I should, like, I was just wondering the technique of increasing coldness. I think that we could just say, instead of void update, oops, wrong button. What happened here? What the hell happened here? Alright, hold up. Alright, there we go, I'm sorry. Instead of void update, I just want to make new, what is this? Oh, I'm debugging the code, hold up. Alright, there we go. Sorry for that. I just want to remove these pluses that I added. There we go. Now I want to increase coldness by every second, so no matter what. So what I want to do is coldness plus equal 1 every second, which is time dot delta time. So 1 times time dot delta time. I could actually make it like this. Actually, nah, it doesn't really make any sense to make it like this. I just want to increase coldness by every second. You could make it like region specific by adding like a cube and then like having a cube here. What I'm going to do though is like have a fireplace that is going to be represented by like a cylinder, which is really, really creative. And that is going to be like a fireplace that I will, when the player comes near it, it's gonna warm up the player by decreasing the coldness. So we're gonna call this for fireplace, and obviously create one more tag and call this fireplace 2, so that we have the tag ready for it. And obviously, once again, go back to your fireplace object and then click on the tag itself, because it's not tagging when you create it. You must go back and create or tag it by yourself as soon as you create it. So it's a really important thing. However, with this, I'm not going to click on is trigger inside of the capsule collider. I'm just going to add a new component instead, which is going to be like I think we can actually have a sphere collider to make it a little bit more realistic, I guess. And then edit collider and make it a little bit bigger. That was not a little bit, I lied. But I guess that's okay. Oh, it's kind of offset, but I don't really care. The player is going to be here or here. Not gonna really near from behind, at least not me. So I don't really, it's not really important how it's laid out, so should be fine. What did we set max coldness to? 100. So okay, then the coldness is obviously going to increase instead of decreasing, because that's logically the right way. And instead of on trigger enter, we want to make sure that the player is actually going to be decreasing the coldness if he is inside of this fireplace that we just created. So I want to go to void on trigger enter and say if other.tag is equals to fireplace, just like we did with everything else, the food and the water. And then I want to say coldness minus equal, oh wait, actually, you know what? I'm going to make it easier for myself. I'm just going to create a new building here. Underneath private building running, you can just create a new building called for private bool triggering fireplace. And then go back to on trigger enter if other.tag is equal to fireplace, and then say triggering fireplace is equal to true. There we go. And here where in void update where I wrote coldness plus equal 1, where we increase the coldness, you can just cut that out. So like copy and cut it out, and then write if triggering fireplace. So if we are actually triggering with fireplace, then it's going to be minus equal 1 by every second. Else, basically meaning if we're not triggering with it. Oops, sorry for that. There we go. Meaning that if we're not triggering with the fireplace, meaning that we are actually getting more cold, just paste it in, and it's going to be plus equal 1 by every second. So save it so that it compiles, and then we go back to Unity, and we can actually play the game to see how it works. Oh, and also I want to go back to fireplace object, and yeah, I did the mistake. So as you can see, I forgot to check is trigger. So if you did forget it as well, or if you're perhaps smarter than me, which you probably are, because you probably have checked it, but if you didn't, make sure to do it, because otherwise it's just going to push you out of the object when you're trying to near it. So that's really important. Let me just highlight the player. There we go. You can see that the coldness is now increasing, and when we near the fireplace, it's obviously going to decrease. So everything is working properly. I can pick up food and thirst or water, and you can see that the values are going to change in the inspector. And when I near myself to the fireplace, it's going to decrease my coldness. And you can see that right now it's just decreasing even if I don't trigger with it anymore. So what I want to do is I just want to copy this last part, which is if other.tag is equal to fireplace, triggering fireplace is equal to true. I want to copy that entire thing or entire statement and paste it inside of onTrigger exit. And then inside, instead of having triggering fireplace equal to true, I want to set that to false. Now, when I exit the fireplace radius or zone or region, whatever, it's not going to decrease the coldness, it's going to increase instead. So right now it's decreasing, and now it's increasing again. So it's working properly. And you can see that it's going to negative values, meaning that if the player is going to be able to cheat the nature of your game by going inside of the fireplace, waiting there like 100 seconds, and then moving out of the fireplace, and he's going to have the double of time to actually get cold and die. So what I want to do is where it says triggering fireplace and it says coldness minus equal to 1, I want to say if triggering fireplace, wait, hold up. I just thought of something else is going to deflect that. So what I want to do is instead of using else, I'm going to say if triggering fireplace equals false. There we go. That makes it easier for myself and for you guys. And if triggering fireplace is equal to true, or actually just triggering fireplace and coldness is greater than 0, then we keep on decreasing the value. There we go. That should work out. So we just go back to your Unity client now, play the game, and we near the fireplace. It's gonna decrease, and it stops at 0. So it slightly goes off 0, like minus 0.008, and that's literally nothing at all. Like it's not even a nanosecond. So shouldn't be worried about that because it's gonna increase quickly up. So but yeah, anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this tutorial video. I hope you all enjoyed. I know that it was a little bit too long. I was not expecting to make it this long, but I decided that I could as well, just to make sure that I teach you guys all these 4 attributes that are like core mechanics of like a survival game, I guess. And instead of hurrying up my videos, I focus on quality instead. And if you guys find it too slow or anything, you can just skip forward and just follow the part that you're interested in. But this is pretty much my pace. And but let me know if you guys find it way too slow or have any feedback about my tutorials in general, because obviously I'm really interested in developing my skills, but also improving as a tutorial maker, just like I'm interested in improving my YouTube skills. So just let me know if you have any feedback at all, and I'll try to implement that as soon as possible. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed and found it helpful. If you did, make sure to hit that like button down below. It's really the best way to support me besides subscribing, obviously. And just like I said, subscribe if you want to stay up to date for new videos coming soon too. And leave a comment if you have any feedback, or if you need any help, if you have some compiler errors or so. And I'll try my best to help you out. And with that being said, I'll catch you guys